installment of Echo Worm Live. Today we are chatting about all of our favorite questions and comments and just things that we want to talk about for everything that has been on the channel since the beginning of the channel. So we go through plenty of questions that were asked in advance by you guys either on YouTube or through Patreon or any of our other spaces like Discord. But if you have any questions that you want answered and you're in the chat right now, feel free to go to the live chat and ask anything you want to, anything I'm comfortable answering on camera, whether it be about me, about the YouTube process, or specifically about the stuff that we cover, whether it be Percy Jackson, Harry Potter, just things that you want to discuss about those. Let me know in the chat below, and we will talk about them. So I have a bunch of pre-prepared questions that we'll get to today. I want to adjust something real quick. I had a cat knock my camera off, and so I was trying to readjust that. That happened right as I was about to start streaming, so that's why I was a few minutes late today. So hopefully you guys will forgive me. But let's start. Just want to check in the live chat here. Perkabest been waiting for a whole hour, waiting for it. Yes, I'm finally here. So, all right, let's start with a question by XPogoSam, one of my patrons who has been very, very generously and appreciatively listening to The Radiation Effect, which is a book that currently has 12 chapters on the channel. It's a book that I'm actively writing in its first draft, so obviously there might be some inconsistencies with character eye colors or something stupid that I just haven't edited through. But basically how I'm writing this book is I'll write a chapter at a time, record it, put it on the channel, and get you guys' feedback. So it's kind of this cool experiment that we're doing, but we're about a third of the way through the book at the moment. The first 12 chapters, like I said, are up on the channel if you want to go check it out. That's called The Radiation Effect. But XPogoSam says, and I'm glad you asked this in advance because I did have to do a little bit of digging to get exactly what I was thinking in my head and to get the visuals that I want to show you guys. But the question is, if Radiation Effect were to be a film of some kind, who would you want to be cast for the main 6 squad members? Great question. Now, keep in mind that the examples that I'm going to show you, a lot of them are significantly older than they need to be to play these characters. But like in the perfect world, if I were to go back and catch these actors when they are age appropriate to the characters for the book, because they're all in the first book, they're 14, 15 years old. They're freshmen in high school. But I did do some digging. I had my wife's help. I had some friends' help too. And the first one, let me jump my screen here. So the first one for Margot, the issue with Margot is she's like uncomfortably tall, and a lot of actresses nowadays aren't. But one person who really fits the description that like I had in my head for Margot is Elle Fanning, the younger sister of Dakota Fanning, who, as you see here, is significantly taller than her sister. But yeah, so Margot is like uncomfortably tall, but that's kind of the look that I have in my head when I picture Margot. For Jordan, if you guys are familiar with Henry Danger, obviously now Jason Norman's a little too old to play this part, but if you look at him kind of toward the end of when they were filming Henry Danger, that's kind of the image that I have in my head for Jordan. For Kent, it's a little trickier. So I put Joshua Bassett, and I put a young picture of Joshua Bassett, because as he gets older, he kind of has this swagger to him that doesn't quite fit Kent in the first book. But he's got kind of this ambiguous look to him, the dark features, the dark hair, and that's kind of how I picture Kent, especially in the first book. And then with Liz, it's a little trickier because so she's half white, half Pakistani, and you really don't get the Pakistani part with someone like Brooklyn Prince. But in terms of child actors at the moment who kind of fit the look that I had in my head for her, Liz, I would do something similar to this picture here of Brooklyn Prince. And then the one that really bothered me, because there isn't someone who fits it better, but Johnny, I went with Walker Scobell. If Walker Scobell cut his hair and got less funny, I think he could be a really solid just visual interpretation for what I have in my head for Johnny. And then, of course, the dream casting, she's a little, just slightly too old now, but McKenna Grace would be the perfect Emma, I think, just as kind of the main character of the book. I think McKenna Grace would be the perfect casting in a perfect world. But anyways, I just wanted to show you guys those because that was a very good question that I was curious about. doing as well as I could with the answers that I wanted to give. So, Mateo Bartholan says, would you rather eat a house or eat a mouse? That's a good question. I think a mouse would have more nutritional value and it would get over a lot faster. But you'd also have to get over the fact that you have to eat a mouse. But my cats do it all the time, so I would go with the mouse, just simply for time's sake. I got a lot going on, and it'd take me too long to eat a house. Perkabeth says, how long have you been reading on your channel, and what are your channel colors because of? I want to make my favorite YouTubers cups. Interesting. Well, I give you full permission. Here is me giving full permission to use my logo and my branding on cups or mugs if you want to. Eventually, I might try to sell some actual Echo Wirm merchandise. But yeah, feel free to. I've been reading on this channel since December or November of 2022-ish is when I started recording stuff. I don't think I really started posting till January of 23. So it's been about a year and a half, maybe a little more. I was back on the original channel, a long story. But this channel has been active for 4 months or so. And so all of the earliest videos were all posted kind of on the same day on this channel. But the earliest I think I posted a Percy Jackson chapter was way back last January, not this past one. My channel colors, I don't think they really represent anything. I picked a random Canva insert and added the letters EW to it. So there's nothing really to it. Let's see here. AJ Girl says, I am on the 29th chapter of the House of Hades. Well, fantastic. We're, I think, 36 chapters in on the main channel, which means that tonight at midnight my time, which is 1 o'clock in the morning Eastern time, the full first half of House of Hades will be up on the channel. I think I'll leave the first 36 chapters up as individual videos. Sometimes I have a habit of privatizing them at the halfway point. I think I'll keep them up till the end of the book. But the first 36 chapters are out now. We are up to chapter 70 over on Patreon if you guys have the financial means to do so. It's just $3 a month if you want to get several weeks in advance of the normal channel. Perkabeth says, I'm almost done on the Mark of Athena. Well, perfect. If you guys didn't see, I did post the Demigod Diaries, which is the companion book for Heroes of Olympus, which if you're caught up through Son of Neptune, you should be able to read that without any spoiler repercussions, because it takes place right before Mark of Athena. All of the stories. The whole book is separate stories, so it takes place before the Percy Jackson series. It takes place all over the place, but... Awesome 800 says, I don't know why, but I always imagined you to have dark hair like Percy. Well, okay, so I will say this. My natural hair color is significantly darker than the blonde that's sitting on top right now, but I do still have pretty light hair. The color of my facial hair, as little as it is that you can see on camera there, that's kind of my natural hair color. Let's see here. Rimshaw Zishan says, I love your Harry Potter audiobooks, and I was wondering if you had a specific date planned for the release of The Cursed Child. Really, it's just when I finish it. So I've been doing about... so there's 4 acts, right? Because it's 2 parts. Each part has 2 acts. So 4 acts total. And I have been doing 1 act a month. And so this month I just got done with Act 2. So I'm guessing it'll be up in September. As soon as I finish it, as soon as I post Part 4 or Act 4 for Vimeo, I'll have it up for everybody. Or as soon as I have it up on Patreon, I'll have it up for everybody over on Vimeo. So if you wouldn't mind continuing to be patient, or if you do have the financial capability to do so, I actually might make the first 2 public, because I know a lot of you guys have been waiting a long time, and I really, I feel bad about hiding content from you guys if you're not paying. Nothing that I ever give to patrons, I will ever keep away for you guys for free. And so eventually I want to give you guys everything that's over on Patreon. Of course, it does put a little penny in my pocket, giving a little incentive to those people who are able to do so. But I will definitely think about making the first 2 public sooner. Perkabeth says, if you could be any character in Percy Jackson but Nico or Percy, who would it be? Leo. I think Leo has way too much fun with himself. I'm kind of like that. I don't know when to keep my mouth shut. Let's see here. Perkabeth says, when the school year starts, I will be like 30 minutes late. That's okay. I do this because it fits the best for everybody. It's kind of that... Right now, it's like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, almost midnight over in Europe, and so I try to catch the early to late afternoon in the United States, and then just right as people are maybe going to bed or pushing off their bedtimes over in Europe, because I know we have people on both sides. Let's go to a question from Awesome800, who says, who do you think your godly parent is in the PJO universe? I always say Hades. My favorite god is Nike, or goddess is Nike, but I've always thought of myself as a Hades stan. Who's your favorite character in the entire Riordan universe? Riordanverse. This is from Ibarra fam. Probably Nico. I really like Garion. That's a really weird shout. I really like Garion. But of like all of the characters, it's probably Nico. And Perkabest says, I tried your Starbucks order and it's great. Yeah, that's partially why I was late, is the Starbucks that I stopped by on my way home from my main job was really, really busy today. I waited 20 minutes for this. But it's worth it. AJ Girl says, do you have a cat? Sometimes I feel like I hear one in the background. Yes. At the moment, I have 4 cats. I have two cats, and then we're babysitting 2 other cats for the next month or so for my wife's friend. So yes, you probably will hear cats in the background. I do my best. My microphone faces me. I'm in a very enclosed space, but sometimes it echoes from behind the camera, even with the doors closed. So I do my best. Tarek Chahadu says, you're in Europe? I ran away to a quiet place in my workplace to watch this. It's 4 o'clock. I'm not in Europe. No, I'm in the United States. But I know that we have a lot of viewers in Europe, specifically Poland, which I've always found interesting. But yes, I know we have a lot of viewers over in the United Kingdom, several in Ireland, if your names are to go by, over on Patreon. And then, like, I had someone subscribe to or become a patron today from Czechia, which I thought was really cool. So I know people watch the live streams on either side of the pond, so I try to make it the easiest time for everybody. Rimsha Zishan says, just wondering, if you could live in one of the characters' shoes from the Harry Potter universe, who would it be? Oh boy. Live in their shoes. That's a really good question, because a lot of the characters that I really like or would want to be have really tragic backstories. Like, I love Hagrid. I love Hagrid's life, but I would not want to be Hagrid because his life sucked for the longest time. Kingsley Shacklebolt. And I'm not going to elaborate on why, because I honestly don't know why. But I'm choosing Kingsley Shacklebolt because he seems like he has a pretty chill life. Let's go to a pre-prepared question here. Feel free to keep asking in the chat. This one is from Ariana Plays, who says, when are you guys going to go through Chalice of the Gods? Good question. I already have it recorded. I already have it finished and edited. I'm not going to release it until after Blood of Olympus. So as soon as the channel's done with Blood of Olympus, we won't go chapter by chapter. It'll just be the next day. You get a full drop of Chalice of the Gods. It's already done. And then... same thing with Patreon. So Patreon will probably be 3 to 4 weeks in advance of the channel. So if you guys want to become patrons, then Chalice of the Gods will be up there just beforehand. A similar question came from... Actually, we'll come back to it because I don't want to skip around here. I have these ordered. Maybe not in the right order. Murphy Uyghur says, can you show us your list of books you're going to read? Oh, I clicked the wrong thing there. My bad. I probably could. I don't have a specific list. I have a list of series that I want to get through. So, for example, you see the books behind me, right? Right now they're sideways. But these are the books that I get to when I can. So we got Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, Game of Thrones, Hunger Games, Sherlock Holmes, a wrestling book that I want to finish, Sun and the Star, Divergent, Maze Runner, House of Cards, and the next Dune book. I haven't started on it yet. And then over on the other side, I have books that I haven't read yet, but are in my pile to start reading soon. I got a bunch of the Magic Treehouse books. I got Fablehaven, Aragon, the next of the Among the Hidden series, next Diary of a Wimpy Kid book, The 100 by Cass Morgan. I haven't done Fantastic Beasts. I'm not sure if I want to, because it's not really a readable book. Tale of Despero is my next, non-series book that I want to read. The Avatar, The Last Airbender Kyoshi books. And then, Percy Jackson's Greek Gods and all of, the side Percy Jackson books and that sort of thing. And then, This is my immediate read pile. So this is what I am actively going through on a daily basis, is one chapter from every single one of these books. I'm very busy at the moment, but these books include A Series of Unfortunate Events. I have finally started that one. The Kane Chronicles, which we will be doing over on Patreon starting in 2 days, I believe. We'll be starting with the Red Pyramid, and that'll be up on the regular channel after we're done with Blood of Olympus. The last of the Chronicles of Narnia books, City of Ember. I need to do a chapter from the Book of Mormon because I haven't recorded one in a while. Blood of Olympus, we're starting over on Patreon next Wednesday. The first chapter of that comes over on Patreon. And then the next of the A to Z Mystery Series, and then Margaret Peterson Haddox's Found. So a lot of books that I'm working on at the moment. So you guys keep giving me stuff, and I promise they will make the list eventually. But the list is very, very extensive at the moment. Question from AJ Girl, who says, what is your favorite Percy Jackson or Heroes of Olympus ship? Like, default's always going to be Percabeth or Percabeth, however you guys pronounce it. I do like Leo and Calypso. That's a little bit of a spoiler for those of you who have never read Heroes or House of Hades before. Of course, there's some in and outs of that. Let's see here. I pretty much like every ship. Like, all of the ships make sense to me. The one that always bores me, and seems to be the common case, is Jason and Piper, for a variety of reasons that we don't need to get into at the moment. But it's for me, it's never been an enjoyable experience reading them. It just feels very, not forced, I should say, but like we waited for Percy and Annabeth, like, and Leo had his stuff, and Frank and Hazel kind of, theirs is kind of the smaller, but they still had an arc, whereas Jason and Piper, their relationship was there. Now, it was a fake relationship, and they've developed it through that, but I never really cared for it having that relationship from the off. So anyways, that's, like, I like all of them except Jason and Piper, in my opinion. Marcus says, being a Patreon is a huge W, by the way, folks. Well, thank you, Marcus. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's only $3 a month. So if you're able to do that, you get plenty more content than is currently on the channel. Everything over there will eventually be on the channel or be on Vimeo for free, in the case of Hunger Games and Harry Potter, because we can't put those on YouTube at the moment. But yes, Patreon right now, several months in advance with certain properties. So feel free to check it out over there. Do you like Will or Nico better? I feel so. Part of the issue is I've known, he's a fictional character. I've known Nico since I was 10 years old. I've known these. Will was never really a character necessarily. He was just kind of there. He's just introduced in either, I can't remember which one he's introduced in, either the fourth or the fifth book. Doesn't really play a role until the fifth one. Just has never felt substantive for me until, of course, then we get Trials of Apollo and Sun and the Star. So, personally, Nico's my favorite character, probably. Ibarra Fam says, are you going to read Trials of Apollo? Yes. I will not start Trials of Apollo immediately after Heroes of Olympus. I'm going to take a break from the Greek and Roman stuff and do the Kane Chronicles in between. I've been doing this for a year and a half, so I kind of want a slight break from Percy Jackson. And then after we're done with the 3 Kane Chronicles books, it should be about November-ish, maybe December, and then we'll kick back into the Greek stuff with Trials of Apollo. Joe says, thoughts on Cursed Child? Do you like it or no? There are certain parts of it that I do like. I will say that. But I mentioned this on Discord a couple weeks ago, or maybe it was last week, because I was reading through the second act. It reads like a bad fan fiction. Genuinely, it does. There is a scene, I think it's Act 2, Scene 7, where it's the first time they travel back to the Triwizard Tournament. And half of the dialogue is them pretending to be part of the crowd and doing just these dumb, stupid chants that we never even saw in Goblet of Fire. And it's just milking Goblet of Fire for all it's worth. Goblet of Fire is a fantastic book, but it relies so heavily on nostalgia baiting the audience that I dislike it for that reason. The parts of the Cursed Child that I enjoy are the emotional character beats, where Albus and Scorpius are having moments that are warranted because they feel things that the story has set up for them, not that have been given to them by other books that are better than Cursed Child, if that makes any sense. I don't like it that much. It is nowhere near the quality of all the other books. It was co-written with 2 other authors/playwrights. There are great moments in it, but as a whole, I'm not enjoying it very much. Just Goose says, would you do Six of Crows? I've never read Six of Crows. I will add it to my list and check it out, see if it's something that you guys would enjoy on the channel. I know nothing about it. So, Perkabeth says, yes, you are finally. I asked you on the last live if you could read a series of unfortunate events. Yes, I'm finally there. My wife loves these books so much, she actually made me wait to start them until she could sit in and listen to me read the first chapter. I've never read past the first book, so I'm curious to see how far we go before you guys stop listening. Let's see here. Awesome 800 says, I'm trying to build a library. I wish I had all those books. I have spent a lot of money on books. Sometimes I feel like my wife really dislikes it because I have a monthly book budget. I probably change this number every time we do a live stream, but somewhere around 1,000 books in my house. If I turn my camera around, you'd see 4 full floor-to-ceiling bookshelves just stuffed to the brim with everything from presidential biographies to children's books. So, yeah, one thing I've always wanted is to build a library in my house, and I've kind of done it freehand in this little studio that I have. Carla Basor says, my grandson told me about your channel. Well, that means a lot for me to hear, actually. I love learning how people learn about the channel and what it means to them. So thank you very much for letting me know that. If you guys do hear a cat in the background, it is one of the guest cats that are staying at my house, being locked out of my studio for the first time and not enjoying it, so he's scratching at the door right now. Perkabeth says, my cat was next to my brother when he found a mouse on a glue trap, and he took the mouse and glue trap and ran for my brother. Trust me, I've had cats do that before. But enough of my cats. Let's go to a pre-prepared question from Luke's Cosplay, who says, hey, Echo Worm, I'm doing a Leo cosplay pretty soon, and I was wondering if I could use the audio from the clip with the magic scroll for my cosplay video. Yes. Typically, so I do prefer you guys to ask if you want to use my material for stuff like that, but most of the time I'm not going to say no. And so, yes, please feel free. I would love to see the finished product when you're done. Just send me a link on Discord or something. There's a link below. This should have an active Discord link down below. If it's not working, let me know, and I'll try to fix it before the end of the stream. But there's a bunch of links down below if you guys want to click them and check them out. Infected Phantom says, are you able to apply for monetization on YouTube yet? Not at the moment. Our 90-day time period ends on August 4th, I believe. So if you guys don't know the backstory, right, the old channel was monetized. The old channel was shut down for a variety of reasons, kind of out of our control. We're not going to fight it. But we got a new one, and we were monetized for about a week, including having YouTube memberships. And then, for whatever reason, YouTube's auto-censors, and granted, this happened with the old channel, but they said that we can no longer be monetized because this isn't original content. Which, like I said, happened to the old channel. The difference is, with the old channel, we applied for an appeal. We appealed for monetization, and they accepted our appeal. But when we did the exact same thing on this channel, they rejected the appeal because they said that it didn't prove that this was our material, which I think is bizarre. This is me. I'm Ty. I'm the one that you hear in all of the recordings. This is me on Echo Worm Audiobooks on YouTube, face in front of camera, telling you that this is our channel. But anyways, yeah, so they rejected our appeal, and we have to wait 90 days to try again. So I believe that ends August 4th. So at the moment, the only way to get advanced content is over on Patreon. Let's see here. Awesome 800 says, Will is introduced in The Last Olympian. He heals Annabeth's shoulder, but he only has a few spoken lines. Yeah, I knew he was in Last Olympian. I couldn't remember if they introduced him earlier than that. But yes, that's pretty much... And in Sun and the Star, like, Nico has flashbacks to Will in The Last Olympian, so... Carla Bassor says, I gave my grandson my hardcover books of the Harry Potter and Percy Jackson series. He's reading them while I listen to your audio, and we can discuss the books. I did the same with my son when he was younger. Seriously, Carla, that means the world to me. This channel started as a way for me to preserve my reading for my son when he grows up. And if something were to happen to me where I didn't get to read to my son, or he goes off to college and he needs dad to read to him, I wanted him to have this. So to hear that other people are experiencing my work and these books that I had no part in writing, but the work that I've put into it, and that you guys can enjoy these stories through that means the world to me. So thank you for letting me know that. Nico's my favorite character too, yes. Perkabest says, do you like Percy Jackson or Harry Potter better? Personally, and I've said this before, and this, like, there's no right answer, it's just an opinion thing. For nostalgic reasons, it's Harry Potter for me, but that's because I started reading Harry Potter when I was younger. And for me, as someone who really likes literary analysis, Harry Potter has more to offer in that realm than Percy Jackson does. But I would much rather read Percy Jackson for a feel-good adventure story, whereas Harry Potter is more of a character analysis type read for me nowadays, if that makes any sense. AJ Girl says, besides the fall onto Tartarus, what is your favorite Perkabeth moment? The scene that someone just mentioned with Will in... is that the scene where he's healing Annabeth up in the tower, or the hotel? That's really where we... Like, they've been setting up Percy and Annabeth for a long time, but that's really where we got our first glimpses of, all right, if they survive this, they're going to have a relationship. And for me, that's when I fell in love with them, was that moment right there. And so it's kind of a weird moment, but that's mine for me. I know you guys want me to say the stable scene, but I'm not going to say the stable scene. Let's go to a question from Lee Effian, who says, when did Bob first appear? I don't remember him from the first series. Yeah, so Bob, for those of you that don't know, Bob is a character that we meet again in House of Hades, who, he's a Titan. He doesn't remember his original name. His original name is Iapetus, and he was part of the original Titan army back in the first series of books. If you don't remember him, that's fine, because he doesn't appear in the main series. Bob is introduced and only ever appears outside House of Hades in the Demigod Files, which is the first companion book. So each of the series has kind of this companion book full of short stories and little games and puzzles and stuff. And the one for the Percy Jackson series, the original Percy Jackson series, is called the Demigod Files. And it's kind of a prelude to the Last Olympian. It takes place right before Last Olympian. And Bob is introduced. And wrong series, Percy wipes his memory by basically tricking him into... Bob falls into the River Lethe, which is the one that wipes your memory, down in the underworld. And because of that, he doesn't remember who he is, and Percy gives him a new name and calls him Bob. And so Bob the Titan is introduced in the Demigod Files, and he saves the day in House of Hades. So that's where he comes from. Let's see here. Perkabeth says, it still wouldn't work for me, and I was trying for 2 weeks straight. Interesting. I don't have an answer to that. If you are comfortable giving me your Discord handle on one of my videos, I will try to add you manually to it. It's weird that it's not working for you. X31X39 says, will you read Magnus Chase? Yes. It will be the last of the Percy Jackson series that I read. So we've already done Percy Jackson. Right now we're on Heroes of Olympus. After Heroes of Olympus, we're going to do Kane Chronicles. After Kane Chronicles, we'll do Trials of Apollo. And then once we're done with Trials of Apollo, Magnus Chase will be the last of the big five Riordan series that we'll read. But yes, my plan is to read them eventually. Same user question, can you make a playlist with all of the Riordan verse in order? Maybe. So the Kane Chronicles doesn't really neatly fit anywhere. I could try. I have done all of the Percy Jackson, and they're all in one playlist. So the Percy Jackson Heroes of Olympus books, and then eventually the Trials of Apollo books will be there too. But those are in the Camp Half-Blood Chronicles folder. So the order that I have put them in is the first 4 Percy Jackson books, and then Demigod Files, and then Last Olympian, the first 2 Heroes of Olympus books, Demigod Diaries, the last 3 Heroes of Olympus books, and then I just posted Camp Jupiter Classified. It won't be up until after Blood of Olympus, but Camp Jupiter Classified, and then the next 3 Percy Jackson books would fit there. And then it'll be Trials of Apollo, and then it'll be Sun and the Star. That is how they take place chronologically. So I'll consider putting the other Riordan verse books in there, but they don't necessarily fit as neatly because they take place kind of X world. Infected Phantom says, do you intend on reading all the short stories at the end of the Percy Jackson books? I don't know specifically what you mean by the short stories at the end of the Percy Jackson books. If your prints have short stories at the end of them, they are not from the original books. I have all of the first editions of the Percy Jackson books, so I don't have any of the ones with the short stories at the end of them. But if there are collections of them, like Demigod Files, Demigod Diaries, or if there are ones that you send to me to read that are kind of on their own, then yes, I will probably do that. I know there's a question later on asking if I'll do the Kane Chronicles Percy Jackson crossover book. Yes, I'll probably wait to do that till after the Kane Chronicles. But eventually my goal is to have every single... Let me, so you guys don't mishear me or have video evidence. Let me pause myself there. I probably will not do all of the Rick Riordan Presents series because there are a lot of those books and he didn't write them. But I will do my best to get to all of the Percy Jackson side books, including Greek Gods, Greek Heroes, the Kane Chronicles crossover, Camp Jupiter Classified, Camp Jupiter Classified, and then there's a Camp Half-Blood. I can't for the life of me remember the name of it. But yes, I will try to do all of the side books. The ones that he has written, at least. Let's go to question from, or just a comment from Rimza Zishan, who says, absolutely love all your audiobooks. It's amazing how you put so much emotion into each character's voice. Well, thank you very much. It's a lot different than when I started. I'll tell you what. I have definitely, I shouldn't say perfected the craft, but gotten a lot more comfortable with myself in doing it. So I do anything for you guys. I appreciate it. But thank you very much for the comment. Gage says, who is your favorite of the 7? My personal favorite is, I think it has to be Percy. I really enjoy Leo as a character, and I enjoy reading for Frank because it's my natural accent. So yes. Not to say that I don't enjoy reading any of the female characters. I really love reading Hazel. I do. I think Hazel's a fascinating character. But the 3 that I really enjoy, Percy, by far, Leo is my favorite character, not from the original series, and then Frank is a lot of fun for me to read for, like I said, because it's my natural accent. Thomas Hayhurst says, I'm loving your C.S. Lewis stuff. Well, thank you. Will you ever do Tolkien's works, or is that too masochistic? I don't think it's too masochistic by any means. Yes, the only reason it's not currently on the channel is for copyright purposes. So I have recorded the first 2 chapters of The Fellowship of the Ring. I haven't posted them anywhere. I probably won't post anything chapter by chapter, and I'll just wait till it's done completely. They won't be able to be on YouTube, and that's a Tolkien estate copyright issue. That happens to a lot of users, not just audiobook channels. But eventually when they're done, and it'll be The Hobbit first. It'll absolutely be The Hobbit first. But once I do, it'll be over on Patreon for free, and then over on Vimeo as well. But yeah, I have no reason to dislike Tolkien's works. I'm a Christian myself, so that's why I started reading Narnia, and yeah, I'll definitely read Tolkien. Marcus says, in Percy Jackson, who do you think had the most development as a character? I'd say Apollo, but I'm curious on your take. Yes. So it's been a hot minute since I've read Trials of Apollo. It's been a hot minute since I read Trials of Apollo. I would say, if we can ignore Trials of Apollo for a second and focus on the 2 series that I'm very familiar with because I just read them for the channel, and I think most of you are familiar with, I would say the best character arc is probably Nico. Yeah, I would say Nico probably. Leo's got a pretty decent one. Hazel has a really good one, but it's mostly confined to a single story. And so I in terms of arcs that branch out, Luke Castellan, fantastic character arc. Especially when you add the stuff from what we know about him in the Demigod Diaries. There's a lot of good answers, and I don't have a specific one. So, AJ Girl says, does Rick Riordan know about you? Because at some point, I don't know what book, I know there was something in your read aloud about your channel. No, that that is not in the book. That is absolutely a plug that I put in there. Some people really don't like the fact that I did that. I'm not doing it for comedic effect. I'm doing it for the fact that I have had people try to steal my videos and pass them off as their own. So I'm trying to put little watermarks as much as I can. One maybe that's distracting, but others that aren't too distracting. And if you didn't notice, then perfect. Only I would recognize that and be able to recognize that that's not the original book. Usually I'll make a little wrestling reference or something stupid just to add something so I would be able to find it later. But I do, at least in Mark of Athena and House of Hades, every half I say Echo Wirm Audiobooks somewhere in there. Let's go to a question from Fernando Senzi. Says, will you be doing Trials of Apollo after you finish the main Percy Jackson series? Yes, like I said, but I'm going to take a break to do Kane Chronicles first, just because there's only 3 of them. I want to knock them out of the way here. LTH 5501 says, the new Percy Jackson book is coming out in a few months, and I'm wondering whether you would please be so kind to read it to us. Yes. Here's my intention. I don't know if this will actually happen, but my current plan is to go to Barnes & Noble as early as I possibly can. And I've already ordered it. It will be there for me the morning that it comes out. I will get there as soon as Barnes & Noble is open. I will grab it. I will come home. I will lock myself in my studio. I will record that book until I am done with it. I don't know how fast I'm going to get it out on the main channel. I want it up for patrons before the main channel. And patrons, it might take me about a day or 2. And then it'll be up in its entirety. And this will be right after Chalice of the Gods. So Chalice of the Gods will come out, and then I would say within the next 2 weeks after that book comes out, it'll be up on the main channel for everybody. I'm not going to do chapter by chapter. It'll just be up as one video. So yes, Wrath of the Triple Goddess will be up within 2 weeks after it comes out in bookstores. I'm very excited for it. I'm very nervous about the promise and the commitment that I have to locking myself in my basement, ignoring my family for 2 days, and finishing a book. But I enjoyed Chalice of the Gods, so I think getting through Wrath of the Triple Goddess should not be too difficult for me. Let's go to a question from X31X39, who says, can you read the 39 clues? It's been asked before. The problem is if I commit to the 39 clues, I'm going to have to do all of them. And that's a lot of books. And so I'm hesitant to commit to it, but I may start recording it on my own and see if it's something that's viable. So I'm not going to give you a yes or no answer at the moment, but it's something I'll consider. It would be a significant project, and I think you're only the second or third person to ask me. So it's not super high on my list at the moment, but I am considering it. Just Goose says, you might have answered this already, but what has been your favorite book to read recently? Good question. So I mentioned last live stream, I love Dune, right? I love Dune. I did not enjoy narrating Dune for a variety of reasons. It's a very long book, and it's hard to narrate because of all of the different character internal monologues that happen paragraph after paragraph. There's no really break in them. You don't get a character chapter by chapter. I really enjoyed reading The Giver. That was about 2 months ago that I recorded that. At the moment of the books that are actively in front of me, I've been enjoying Fire and Blood. Part of it is because of the fact that I'm watching House of the Dragon at the same time that I'm reading Fire and Blood. Several of those chapters are available on the channel or over on Patreon if you guys want to listen to those. That is also a really long book, and the chapters are really, really long. So it's taking me a while. But I am enjoying it because in watching the show, I'm able to kind of visualize this now as I read it, which is a lot easier for me being able to visualize characters than just read them outright. Let's see here. Question from Marcus says, honestly, now that you've mentioned Luke, I'm a bit conflicted between him and Apollo. Yeah, Luke's got a fantastic character arc. Really does. Lana says, I'm a huge book fan, but since I got really sick, reading became an impossible task. Your books are life-saving for me. Well, thank you very much. One of my goals is, with this channel, to give people the accessibility to read books that I really enjoy. And so I love Percy Jackson, I love Harry Potter, and if you guys aren't able to read, whether it be disability-based, whether it be just age-based, I know, like, my parents have trouble reading nowadays, or whether it be, like, dyslexia, ADHD, or just you don't have time to read. Like, that was a big thing for me, is I just didn't have time to read. Part of why I started this channel too is I wanted to give myself incentive to read things. It is so much easier for me to be able to carve time to read if I'm recording it and getting it out to you guys. So to hear something like that really means a lot to me. So thank you, Lana. Thomas Hayhurst says, what is a character from a book you've read who you love to hate? Dolores Umbridge. Also, would you consider doing some of Ernest Cline's book? Not a fan, but my brother loves them. I'll do some more research. I'm not super familiar with Ernest Cline's books, but I'll add it to my list and do some research, see if it's something that people would want, on this channel. Gage says, how do you feel about Luke as a character, especially after reading the Demigod Files? I'm guessing you mean Demigod Diaries, because I don't think Luke appears in Demigod Files. I've always loved Luke as a character. It's such a basic, tragic, like, hero fall from grace story, redemption arc at the end kind of thing. And so reading the Demigod Diaries didn't really change my opinion on Luke. It just set up his backstory a little more. I got kind of romantic undertones with Luke and Talia, which I knew were kind of there, but not to the extent that I expected them to be. So that was interesting for me. But Luke's backstory in the Demigod Diaries doesn't really change anything about his character arc for me. Let's see here. Perkabest says, what's your favorite part of The Labyrinth and The Last Olympian? My favorite part of Battle of the Labyrinth is Garion's Ranch, because it was a ton of fun to narrate. And Last Olympian, my favorite part of Last Olympian is probably the beginning, which is a weird thing to say, but I really enjoy the first few chapters. Let's go to a question from AJ Girl says, you don't have to answer this question if you don't feel comfortable, but what state do you live in? I won't tell you where I currently live, but I have dropped a lot of hints and am currently doing so if you look behind my shoulder of where I grew up. Let's see here. Question from Infected Phantom, who says, do you get interrupted during readings often, like pets or families? If so, will you edit it out or redo the recording? I usually just edit it out. So how I do things, whether it be my own error or, like, I have a 1-year-old upstairs who is, like, I record after he goes to bed, but sometimes he'll wake up and just start screaming, and you can kind of hear it. And so what I'll typically do is if it's something super noticeable or something that interrupts my flow of reading, I'll go back to where that started, back to the beginning of the paragraph, and then I'll edit it out from there. So, and I didn't really start doing that until a few books in, so you'll notice some stuff in my early recordings that there are things that I didn't edit out. Let's see here. Xpogo Sam says, just rejoin and listen to your character choices. And I think they all make perfect sense. Glad you put time into your answers and the book itself. Is the second Artemis Fowl book on the schedule at the moment? Yes. I just added it to the pile behind me. I have not started recording it yet, but it is on my schedule to have out on the channel sometime in the next 2 months or so. Yes, the Arctic incident. Question from X3139 says, what made you choose your name? Good question. It's a really stupid answer. It came to me in a dream. Legit, I had a dream one time, and I don't remember anything about the dream, but the only thing I remember when I woke up is the word, or the phrase, echo worm. I could not tell you what the dream was about. It had nothing to do with books, probably. But it was a bizarre enough phrase where echo worm just stuck in my head throughout the rest of the day. And this was way before I even had a YouTube channel. I put it in my notes on my phone, and I was like, if I ever start a film studio or something, or production or whatever, that's a cool name. I always have, like, band names or, like, studio names or something that I have a list of in my phone. Anyways, when I started the channel, I was going through that list, and I saw that, and I went, well, that would fit really well because, bookworm, earworm, that sort of thing. And I changed the spelling. This is a marketing tactic, by the way. If you misspell something intentionally, it sticks in people's mind better. It's the reason the Beatles misspelled their name on purpose. It's a marketing strategy. So I changed the O to an I, and story is complete there. Same user question. Eventually, do you think this can become a job? I do make decent money off of this channel. I have said before, I'm never doing it for the money. I will continue to do it even if I wasn't making any money. I enjoy it too much. It's just nice to have that incentive where I can carve out 5 hours of my night if I'm getting paid to do so. So thank you, all of you, patrons and members. Let's go to, I just want to give a quick shout out while we're here and while we have a bunch of people in the chat. I just wanted to give a quick shout out to my lower level patrons. So these are my national members: Alex Stewart, Andrew Gomez, Aiden, Brady Northam, Braden Vera, Cult, Derek Rosario, Duncan Burley, Aaron Marie Thompson, Faye Coy, Ani Wuchek, Hannah O'Brien, Hardip Singh, James Kirchberger, John Nintendo, Kate, Leo Bowman, Lindsay Miller, Lucy, Lyra, MB, Matsuker, Mika Tamando, Millie Swink, Moses Ojabodi, Nicole R, City Martinez, Srinija Srinivasan, Taylor Grande, Tiffany Martinez, Trevor Lyman, Trusty Astorius, X-Ray, and Alexei Staryakov. And then I wanted to also give a shout out to my top tier patrons: John Buck, Donald Easter, Dalton Bailey, Joseph Morrill, Charles Jacobson, Lydia Bryant, Zhukov Crawford, Riley Lang, Cameron Stevens, Hessa Al-Habashi, Brandon Doty, Bella Joy a second time, Victoria Libretto, Rania, Rock and Ryan 99, M. Alfaro, and Katie Rose. If I skipped you, I do apologize. I just updated those at the beginning of the week. So you should be in there, but if not, I will get that updated for the next live stream. I wanted to give them a huge shout out because I really appreciate everything they do. In terms of making this my full-time job, at the moment, no. I don't have intentions to do that. I really enjoy my full-time job. I have never really disclosed it on the channel, and that's one of the things that I do intend to keep private. But I really enjoy what I do. And so as long as I can make the balance between these two work, I intend to do so. Comment or a question from AJ Girl, who says, yeah, I have dyslexia, so it's very tiring to read, and the Percy Jackson series is so enjoyable. I'm so glad I found your channel. Well, thank you very much. Rain says, should I listen to the side Percy Jackson thingies? Yes. The only one that's really essential, in my opinion, is Demigod Files, which is the Percy Jackson version. Demigod Diaries is just side stuff, fun stuff. You get to learn where Buford the Table came from. But totally up to you. You're not missing anything vastly important, except, like I said, where Bob came from. Rowan Garrell says, not sure if this has already been discussed, but what are your thoughts on Jason Grace? I haven't discussed it in today's live stream, but I probably do it once a live stream. I think Jason is a white meat babyface, and I think he is a less enjoyable version of Percy. Now, Rick Riordan had a difficult task on his hands in making a secondary protagonist to start The Lost Hero. Because if you're going to kick Percy Jackson out of the series, you better do it at the start of a new one. But the problem with Jason is, and Piper even mentions this, and I almost wonder if this wasn't like a meta writing thing that Rick put in there to defend himself, or to even critique his own writing. They call it signposting. But Piper describes Jason as having no faults. And that's why I don't like Jason. Jason is so just by the book, has a personality, but like the thing about Percy is Percy's fun because Percy's just a dick to everybody. Percy jokes all the time. He complains about everything. He's got a great, just like sarcastic view of the world, and Jason doesn't. And so you take all of that away and all the stuff that I like about Percy, and you get Jason. And so Jason, for me, has always been very boring. I don't enjoy reading his chapters. I don't enjoy his relationship with Piper. But that is me personally, and I'll defend my opinion from a critical analysis standpoint. But if you love Jason, then you're totally fine to do so. My opinion shouldn't hinder that. Awesome 800 says, Nico popping up in the ranch in the Battle of the Labyrinth had me shocked. It's really funny. His interactions at the ranch are really funny. But yeah, that is my favorite scene. Probably in all of Percy Jackson is the ranch scene. Marcus says, what character in the Riordan verse do you wish you could have seen more of, or that had potential that was wasted? Personally, I'm a big fan of Talia and wish we could have seen her more. For me, Bianca D'Angelo. And I don't have a specific reason. I just enjoyed her character, and I wish we had more of her. Now, granted, her character arc is necessary for the progression of the story. So I'm not saying that we should have changed her ending by any means, but I enjoy her as a character, and I wish we saw more of her. Let's see here. Awesome 800 says, it came to me in a dream. Echo is a demigod confirmed. Yeah, absolutely. Rain says, was it spelled worm? I have no idea. I didn't see it in my dream. I hear things in dreams. I don't see things. Thomas Hayhurst says, bit of a meme question, but would you consider reading the Bionicle books? Probably not at the moment. I can add them to my list, but they'll absolutely be at the bottom. Also, Warhammer 40k readings would be good, but GW would probably smite you from orbit for it. Yeah. Copyright is a huge, huge issue, so we'll see. But Carp says, hey, I just wanted to say I love what you do, and your Percy Jackson audiobooks are the best. Thank you very much. When you do audiobooks, do you always have the book in real life? Yes. The only exception is my own book, because it's not a printed book, so I read it through my writing on Microsoft Word. But everything else, and you can probably hear this in the recordings, everything else is a physical copy. I own physical copies of every book that I've ever read on the channel. Also, I can't hear Percy without your voice. Well, thank you. I hear that a lot, and it genuinely means the world to me. That someone on Reddit 6 months ago referred to me as the voice of Percy Jackson, and if you guys are on the Percy Jackson Reddit, that has come around a few times, and that just I get a real kick out of that. So thank you guys very much. I appreciate it very much. Poseidon's Cabin BFF of Percy, cool name, says, I have trouble focusing on books, but listening to your narrations, really helps me focus. Thank you very much. Let's go to a question from Jorge Mirandak, who says, who is Sally? Sally Jackson is Percy's mom. If you're familiar with Percy Jackson, you should know who Sally is. She's one of the first characters introduced. But, yeah, Sally is Percy's mom. AJ Girl says, do you have any dogs? I don't have any dogs currently. My house is way too small to own dogs. I grew up with dogs. I had a big Bernese Mountain Dog, which is kind of half Newfoundland, half St. Bernard. So I have grown up with dogs before, but I currently don't own any. Perkabest says, you just use your Leo voice. I don't remember what I said. Let me know what I said, because I probably just got excited. Yeah, this is an acting thing, and I'm not trying to say that I am a professional voice actor by any means, because I'm not. But one of the earliest things they'll teach you in acting is every character use as an extension of yourself. And so each character, I take kind of an aspect of my own emotions and amplify that. So Frank is me being hyper-Canadian, if that wasn't obvious. Leo is me being super excited. Percy is me being super sarcastic, that sort of thing. So, Infected Phantom says, do you have any predictions for what the next Percy Jackson book contains? Not specifically. My biggest guess about anything is that in this next book, so Chalice of the Gods, if you've never read Chalice of the Gods, this isn't really a spoiler. But unlike the original series, Chalice of the Gods specifically has a self-contained arc. And Chalice of the Gods is a metaphor for growing up and age, specifically. Like Cursed Child is Rick Riordan... Chalice of the Gods is Rick Riordan saying to his audience, it's okay that you're getting older. And I get the feeling that Wrath of the Triple Goddess and whatever the third book will eventually be called will also have similar story-based arcs. So one of the big, and this isn't really a spoiler, Sally Jackson eventually has another kid. That's she's not a main character, but she's a character in Trials of Apollo, Sally Jackson's daughter, who is obviously not alive during Percy's time in the original books, but Sally Jackson eventually has another kid. And so my assumption is either in this book or the next book, one of the overarching arcs for the story is going to be about not necessarily fatherhood, but children. Whether it be Percy being an older sibling to this kid that he is basically 20 years older than, or just in general having kids, growing up, having your own house. Obviously, it's about college, so it's continuing to grow up. But I think there's a next element beyond just being okay with age, and that's what Chalice of the Gods was about. Let's go to a question from Rain says, I thought it was just my bad memory, so I just accepted him being there. I thought he was one of Kronos' Titans. He was, but yes, he's introduced in Demigod. We're talking about Bob. He was one of the Titan army, but he went to Tartarus to stop Percy, and Percy tricked him. He lost his memory, and now he's a good guy. And so now he's fighting on Percy's side against the Giants. Xpogo Sam says, not even a question, but I'm so glad the Calypso chapters are out for House of Hades. Didn't realize how much it was hinted at in prior chapters, like the curses put upon Percy and Annabeth in Tartarus. Yeah, it paints Calypso in a weird light, but I have, like, Leo's chapters with Calypso on Ogygia, which aren't out on the main channel, but that's not really a spoiler. I feel like that's one of the most... for those of you guys that know just the greater Percy Jackson arcs, I feel like there are some spoilers that go beyond... They're not really spoilers because everybody always talks about them. Now, there is a huge spoiler in Trials of Apollo that everyone who's read Trials of Apollo knows about that I won't spoil, because if you've never read it, it is major, and please don't spoil it in the chat. I will ban you from the chat if you put it in the chat. But yeah, all that to say that Leo and Calypso's chapters are probably my favorite chapters in the entire series. So it was funny, we went to my mom's house. She lives about 4 hours east of me, and has a new house out in Minnesota. And we went to visit, and the first time that I'd read House of Hades, I was like 14 years old, and I was on a hockey trip, and I was playing in the town literally next to where my mom lives nowadays, and I was reading it at this hotel. And we were driving to my mom's house last week for 4th of July, and I drove, literally the highway goes right past that hotel. And I thought it was so funny that I had just recorded those chapters for this channel, and now I'm driving past the building where the first time that I read these chapters, I was right there. It was this cool experience for me, and yes, they've always been my favorite, but I remember where I was the first time I read them. Gage asks, this has already been asked, but I'll gladly answer it again because it's a quick answer. If you were a demigod, who would be your godly parent? Mine would probably be Hades. Let's go to a question from Isabella, who says, how many characters do you post, or how many chapters do you post a day on House of Hades? Right now, 2. So until we're done with the book, it'll be 2 a day. If you're in Eastern time, it's 1 a.m. and 11 a.m. If you're Central like me, then it is midnight and 10 a.m. So 2 chapters a day. Once we get to the end of the book, then it'll be 1 a day, interspliced between Blood of Olympus and another of those midnight chapters with Dune. Poseidon's Cabin BFF of Percy says, have you read Chalice of the Gods yet on your channel? I have recorded it. It is not out yet. It'll be out after Blood of Olympus. I did not want to have spoilers in there for you guys. So after Blood of Olympus, Chalice of the Gods will come out basically the next day. Awesome 800 says, what I find interesting about your audiobooks is sometimes I'll read a line and interpret it in a completely different tone than you read it in. And I find that very interesting. That is interesting. And I certainly could be in the wrong. I read a lot of chapters a day. There are definitely certain tonal things that I might get wrong. The one benefit of Heroes of Olympus for me as a narrator is I have read these books before. So I know most of the beats, and I know kind of how to read it. So I'm foreshadowing or I'm adding the correct emotions. Like I can go into House of Hades knowing where the story goes for Nico. That's not a spoiler now, it's out on the channel, but obviously knowing Nico's character progression and his motivations in House of Hades, that is something that I wouldn't know if it was my first time reading it. And so going into House of Hades or reading for Nico, I can have that expectation in my head and portray that in my portrayal of his character. Rain says, next generation book would be cool. I think I might have to, it might have something to do with a goddess. It could be Hecate. But been there, done that. I remember there was a second one along with Hecate that had 3 faces. Yeah, this is me ignoring minor gods in Greek mythology, but off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you who the triple goddess is. You say multi-faced god or goddess, and I think Janus, who I doubt we'll see, but you never know. Let me take a drink real quick. My voice is getting shot. Rowan Garrell says, love the sound of turning pages that are sometimes in your videos. Having listened to audiobooks for most of my life, it's not something that I've heard often. So I got the inspiration to do that from James Dobinson, who has a really good Harry Potter series, and was kind of the reason that I started doing audiobooks. And I liked the way that he did them, and how he did them was he never edited out his mistakes. It was just a straight through read, and you could hear him turn the page, you could hear him choke, you could hear him cough, that sort of thing. Nowadays, I do tend to edit out my vocal mistakes, but I do try to keep as authentic as I can. I want to give you guys that feeling. My goal is to give you guys kind of that either dad reading to you or older brother reading to you, that sort of vibe. And I always want you guys to have that comfort listening to me. Most audiobooks are read through a news screen on a computer, and I didn't want to do that. I don't get enough joy out of reading a PDF compared to what I do reading an actual book. Books smell good too. Thomas Hayhurst says, not related to books, but what is your go-to dish if you go out to eat with family and friends? Used to be spaghetti. I would probably say an 8-ounce sirloin. Had one last night. Shout out my local Applebee's. Also, thank you for getting the pronunciation on my surname right. I do my best. I don't often do that, especially with Eastern names. I do apologize to all of my readers who have non-European names. I typically do well with the European ones, but that's just my background. So I do my best. Cora says, how many chapters are left in House of Hades? If you're going by so on the channel, we have 36 out right now. There are 78 total, so there are still 42 chapters to go. So that's a clean 3 weeks. So 3 weeks and we'll be done with House of Hades if you do 2 chapters a day. In terms of Patreon, I think we're at 70 now, so 8. Rain says, it could be Artemis or Diana. How come you don't do sound effects? Depends what sound effects. If they're in the books, I typically do them. Unless it's something that I don't know. It depends. Star Wars, I don't, because the Star Wars ones are really weird, but for the most part, I do. Question from Dupe Stickles, cool name, who says, do you have any idea where I can find this particular edition of the Narnia books? I believe you're referring to the cover art that I have on the channel. Those are the original first edition covers. It's very unlikely that you'll find a first edition if you look anywhere on the internet, unless it's like $1,000, because those books came out over 70 years ago. But I'm sure that they do have current reprints with the original cover art on them. So if you just look up Narnia first edition covers, you might be able to find a reprint of it from like the mid-90s, or they may have even done a run during the Walden Media franchise in the late 2000s. But those are the original edition artwork. I can't remember the artist's name. Question from Cora, who says, can you read the rest of the Heroes of Olympus series? Yes. As soon as we're done with House of Hades, we'll do Blood of Olympus, and then we're done. So all of the other books are available on the channel in the Camp Half-Blood Chronicles playlist. I could be mean and say no, and I think that'd be really funny if I just said, no, we're just going to stop right before Blood of Olympus. How about horse clops? I could. I don't know when there is an example in the books. Like, usually I only read it if it's, like, spelled out, so. Michael Charo says, have you ever thought about reading the Earthsea series? I haven't, but I will say this, because I've been getting a lot of requests, and I don't mean to, I don't mean to trivialize any of these series by any means. I'm getting too many dragon requests, right? And what I mean by that is, I have at least 10 series right now that I am either working on or are on my list that people have been asking me to do that are dragon-based. So, for example, I am currently reading Game of Thrones, Fablehaven, and Aragon, all 3 of which are centered around dragons. If I add Wings of Fire to that, if I add Brandon Sanderson's books to that, if I add Earthsea to that, that's a lot of dragons, and I don't specifically want to do just dragons on the channel, so I'm going to try to space them out a little bit, but yes, I will definitely add the Earthsea series to my list. Let's see here. Let's go to a question. Feel free to keep asking questions in the chat. Let's go to a question from Sarah W, who says, are your live streams always on Thursdays? I try to make them always on Thursdays. My goal, and what has typically been the case, is every other Thursday at 5 o'clock Eastern. So today we started at 5 o'clock Eastern time on a Thursday. So if we do 2 weeks from now, that is July 25th. And barring anything that might pop up in my life, like say an emergency happens, or a technological glitch happens, then we'll have to move it to a different day. But typically it's every other Thursday, usually the 2nd and 4th, but that has a habit of changing, at 5 o'clock Eastern, and we usually go until about 7 Eastern. Samuel Stipe says, what is your favorite Percy Jackson book? Overall, it's like all of the Percy Jackson multiple series is Mark of Athena. I think objectively the best book is House of Hades. My personal favorite of the original Percy Jackson books is Battle of the Labyrinth. I usually like the second to last book in every series. The only reason that I like Mark of Athena better than House of Hades is for nostalgic personal reasons. Rowan Garrell says, do you have a favorite god or goddess? Nike is my favorite, personally. Or Victoria, if you want to go by the Roman version. Let's go to a question from Dave Tella, who says, when is Harry Potter and the Cursed Child going to be released on Vimeo? So someone asked me this in the chat earlier. My goal is to have it out by the end of September. And I will try to maybe get the first act. I want to get it all to you at once. So that's part of why I'm hesitant to give you the first part at the moment. But the first 2 acts are up over on Patreon. But on Vimeo, I will try to have them up for free, certainly by the end of September. I did say earlier end of summer, and then I got really busy. So now I'm saying end of September. Stinker says, what is your least favorite Percy Jackson book? Sea of Monsters, hands down. I could give you a variety of reasons, and I know a lot of people love Sea of Monsters, and I'm not trying to bash your personal tastes. I've just never liked Sea of Monsters. Graham Wowie says, hello, I'm a fan of your work. Well, thank you very much, Graham. Aaron Grace says, how do I become a channel member? So I mentioned this earlier as well. There currently isn't a way to become like a YouTube channel member. We are not monetized at the moment. But if you want advanced content and you want to support me financially or do either, whatever, $3 a month or more, you have the option over on patreon.com. There are different tiers there. So $3 gives you everything in advance. $5 you get you're part of the national. So all of my long form videos, I typically give you credit. And then same case with my League 2 patrons. Those, you will get your name on every single chapter video. And then League 1 and Champion tier are the ones who I typically give shoutouts to vocally all the time in my long form videos, especially over on my second channel. And then the Champion level, that's $25 a month or more. You guys are a part of my book club. So if you have the financial capability and you want to do it, $25 a month or more, I send you a free book at the beginning of every month. It's typically the one that we're doing on the channel. So the default one for this month was The Red Pyramid, the first book of the Kane Chronicles, because we're going to start that next week, unless you ask me for something else. So for example, someone asked me if they could send me like an entire box set of the Percy Jackson series, sign them, send them back. Yes, I will absolutely do that if you guys asked. Thomas Aher says, another not book-related question, but do you like cheese, and what's your favorite type? I wish I could say yes, but I can't. I am severely lactose intolerant. I'm also allergic to chocolate, and I didn't develop that until like a year ago, which is very weird. I've gone my entire life being able to eat chocolate, and now all of a sudden, like within the last year, every time I eat chocolate, my mouth swells. So I wish I could give you an answer, but I can't. My body's falling apart. I'm getting old. Question from Charlotte the Bestie, who says, this is about The Lost Hero. Where is Mr. Jackson? That's a good question. It is kind of a spoiler for the end of the book, learning where Percy is, so I won't tell you outright, but a lot of people really dislike The Lost Hero because Percy's not in it. But there is a narrative reason, why Percy is not in The Lost Hero. He comes back in the second one. Question from Thea Howe, who says, anyone else think they're saying evening mustard? Yes, so the phrase evening muster, it's an event that they do every night. It's basically just a gathering space at Camp Jupiter. But yes, it does very much sound like evening mustard. It's Muster instead of ARD. Question from Brother K, who says, is there any way to get your content about you-know-who? I believe you're talking about Harry Potter. If you're also talking about Hunger Games, that's in the same boat. Both are available for free on Patreon, so you don't have to become members over on Patreon to get those. But then if you do want to not watch on Patreon, because I know sometimes their video engine isn't the best, they are also available over on Vimeo.com. Links to both of those are available in the description of this video, as well as the description on the channel bio. So if you go, like, if you look up Echo Wirm, or if you click my logo or whatever, and just go to the channel on YouTube, there should be a description with a bunch of links on it. One of them is an updated Discord link, which should be active, should work, and then Vimeo and Patreon. Stinker says, what does SPQR mean? I heard it in The Lost Hero. SPQR, I can't... let me tell you exactly. SPQR, it's a Roman phrase that means, well, it means the Senate and the people of Rome, but the exact translation is Senatus Populusque Romanus, which is Latin for the Senate and the Roman people. So essentially when the Roman Republic was founded and then the Roman Empire was founded, SPQR was kind of like... so it doesn't really translate very well in the United States, but it'd be very similar to something like God Save the King or God Save the Queen over in England. It's just a common phrase that basically means like glory to this country, or you could say like God bless America, that sort of thing. So SPQR means literally stand with the country, stand with Rome. And so it's when you go to Rome, so like I've lived in Italy, on their signage, on their road signs, on their plumbing, like everywhere you go, you see SPQR. It's basically a symbol for Italy sometimes as a whole, but specifically the city of Rome. SPQR is kind of like their symbol, their logo, that sort of thing. Senatus Populusque Romanus, with an S. Yeah, Romanum would be a building. Romanus is just body of people. Question from Radek Nered, who says, will we get the last Heroes of Olympus book here on Patreon? Yes. After we're done with Heroes of Olympus, we will start, or excuse me, House of Hades. The acronyms always confuse me. I do apologize if you hear me say one and I mean the other. Once we're done with House of Hades, we will move on to Blood of Olympus. And yes, everything will be available then on Patreon in advance of the channel, and then eventually also on the channel. Mirage apologizes. My Latin was 30 years ago. That totally fine. Latin. So I will say this: of all of the languages to learn, Latin is probably one of the easier ones, but it's still a second language, and I totally understand that. I have been exposed to Latin my entire life, and so I am aware of the different conjugations, if that makes any sense. My vocabulary, it's weird, and it's this way for most languages with me. My grammar is better than my vocabulary, and that's usually not the case for people. But it's the same way with me in French and Spanish. Like, my vocabulary sucks, but I know the grammar really well. Let's go to a question from Hessa Al-Hibashi, who says, why did you skip the Sons of the Dragon chapter? This is in reference to Fire and Blood. I did technically. So I'm not reading it in order is the big thing. It's not a book that you need to read in order necessarily. It's a just a general outline of the world book. It's not really a book or a story. It's just a chronicling of everything that happened in the Game of Thrones universe before Game of Thrones. And so I'm jumping around chapters. The one that I skipped is 100 pages long, which is why I skipped it. I wanted to get all the short chapters out of the way first. It's the same thing that I'm doing with the Bible. Bible is another one. You really shouldn't read the Bible in order. You will probably not make it till the end. Definitely, Bible specifically, start with the Gospels. But Fire and Blood, I'm kind of bouncing around just to try to get as much of it to you guys while avoiding kind of the really, really long chapters so that I personally don't get discouraged from reading the whole book. Question from Gage, who says, if I don't have the physical books yet, do you recommend still getting them even after your audiobooks? It's totally up to you. Money is money, so if you can afford them, then I would definitely do it. You can always come back, and especially with the audiobooks, you can always read them with the audiobooks. I personally, I'm a book collector, so I like them, but if you just simply want to listen to the audiobooks, then just listen to the audiobooks. You shouldn't need to go out of your way to spend money on something that you may never open again. Let's see here. Mirage GSM says, it helps a lot with learning more languages. Learning Latin helped me understanding the grammar of my native German better. Well, dankeschön. I always love listening to where people are from. So if you guys are ever comfortable telling me where you guys come from in the world, whether it even be in the United States, I'm always happy to learn where my listeners are. I always get a kick out of it. I have a cheat sheet, of the languages that I don't know, I have a cheat sheet of the common ones that I see on the channel all the time. So I have a hello and thank you chart for Polish, Filipino, Chinese, Czech, Turkish, Arabic, and Greek. I know all the main European languages, but Polish especially was one that I had to learn for the channel because I have a lot of listeners in Poland. Speaking of which, I have started reading The Witcher. I have no idea when it'll get to you, but I promise I have started reading The Witcher. Isabella says, I know that this is not a book-related question, but what is your favorite song? My favorite song changes all the time. I don't know if I have a favorite song of all time. Obviously, if you see the poster behind this shoulder, I'm a big 21 Pilots fan. At the moment, my wife has been blasting Chappell Roan around the house, so I've been listening to a lot of Good Luck Babe. So I'll give you that as my answer at the moment. Thomas Hayhurst says, what is your opinion on the works of Terry Pratchett? So I'll be honest with you, I don't know Terry Pratchett super well. So let me do some research and give you an opinion next live stream if I can remember. Rowan Garrell says, what are your thoughts on the Percy Jackson show? I don't like how early they introduce certain things, but still far better than the films. That is a much nicer way to say it than some people have put it. Personally, I enjoyed it. But I think I am seeing it through a lens of they have let me down once before. This was significantly better than the movie. I enjoyed it. I think the characters are significantly different than their book counterparts, and I'm not just saying that for casting reasons. I genuinely... I do not believe that Annabeth in the show has the same character motivations as Annabeth in the book, for a variety of reasons. And so I'm curious to see where they'll go. Specifically, the change that bothered me most is the fight at the end of the book and the film, or the book and the TV show, right, where Percy has the fight with Luke. She doesn't witness that in the book. And so part of her character arc in the original series is learning to trust Percy and distrust someone that she has idolized her entire life in Luke. They took that away in the show because she sees Luke betray Percy. So she is void of motivation in terms of distrusting Luke because she witnessed it. And so there are changes to it that I'm very concerned about. I didn't like all of the exposition dumps. I enjoyed it. I'm very worried about the future of the show. I've mentioned this before. I feel the exact opposite of the Percy Jackson show than I do compared to the Avatar TV show. The Avatar TV show, I am very, very excited for the future of the show, but I thought the first season was terrible, if that makes any sense. Let's see here. Stinker says, who's your favorite hero of the 7, not including Percy? I mentioned this earlier. I think it's Leo, probably. Mirage says, what languages do you speak? English, the only fluent language that I have is English. I speak significant amounts of Norwegian. I can get around conversationally in Spanish. I know enough German to read it. And I've been trying to get better at French. But yeah, I would say my 3 main ones that I'm comfortable with are English, Spanish, and Norwegian. And then I do know a little Italian because like I mentioned earlier, I lived in Italy for a little bit. Thomas Hayhurst says, I'm from the United Kingdom, but I can speak sporadic bits of other languages that I pick up on holiday. That's kind of like me too. I do my best. And then I'm ethnically Norwegian, if that wasn't obvious, so that's where the Norwegian comes from. Perkabest says, what made you read Percy Jackson? Originally, and I've mentioned this on live streams before, and I actually ran into this guy a few weeks ago. It was bizarre, because I mentioned it on a live stream about someone asked me the same question. So when I was a 6th grader, we were covering ancient Greece in my social studies class, and I was kind of fascinated by the mythology stuff, and I had a friend, or a classmate at the time, who said, hey, if you like this, like, you should check out Percy Jackson. Like, there's a whole book series about it. And he kind of convinced me, and then, of course, the film was coming out, and so I got really into it right as the 5th book was released, and it's history from there. Like, I've read all the books now, and the channel, and Voice of Percy Jackson, blah, blah, blah. But that same person that I haven't talked to in years, like, I graduated from high school and I haven't seen them since. I ran into them in my hometown like a month or two ago, and I was like, I told them, I was like, hey, you probably don't remember this, but you got me into Percy Jackson, and this is what I'm doing with it nowadays, so thank you for that. And they thought that was kind of bizarre and really funny. So yeah, anyways, just a classmate introduced me to it. Oliver Finstead says, yeah, Norwegian mention. Oliver Finstead is witness to the fact that I am not as good of a Norwegian speaker as someone from Norway. It's very embarrassing when I try to hold my own against Oliver. All of my Norwegian comes from secondhand, like, second-generation immigrants. Stinker says, Leo's my favorite too. Perkabest says, I just started reading it in 5th grade. I'm going into 6th grade. That's about the time that I started reading it. Because, like I said, that's when I was about that age when the 5th book came out. And that's when I really got into them. Let's go to a question from from Rain, who says, how does Hazel know who Dan Schneider is? She doesn't. That's a great question. This is in reference to an Easter egg that I added. I mentioned a little thing about Easter eggs earlier. There's a scene, and I believe it's out on the channel now. There's a scene at the beginning of House of Hades where Hazel and Jason have to wash. Is it? I can't remember. Is it? It's not Scipio. It's. Oh, for the life of me, I can't remember the character's name. They have to wash someone's feet. And the whole time I'm thinking, Rick, why are you writing this? But then at the same time that I was reading that, I had also been watching a YouTube series about just the Dan Schneider rise and fall, whatever. And I went, do I make a Dan Schneider reference here, or do I just leave it be? And I figured if I'm going to add an Easter egg, I might as well. So I added a Dan Schneider Easter egg, and a number of people caught it. It's not in the book. It's absolutely not in the book. It would be inappropriate if it was in the book. But I made the reference, and Rain asked me, how does... Skyrim, thank you. Asked me how Hazel would know who Dan Schneider is, because she's not, like, she didn't grow up with any of these. Anyways, yeah. No, the narrator got carried away with himself. I got a few more questions pre-prepared, so if you guys want to keep asking questions, I can probably hang out until 7 Eastern here. Mirage says, I got into it start of this year when I was down with a cold and was too ill to read or watch anything, so I searched YouTube for audiobooks and found your channel. Well, thank you very much. I like to know that the algorithm is working. I believe at the moment we are the... So there are Percy Jackson audiobooks with more than 1 million views, but they've also been up for like 7 years. So in terms of like active viewership, I think we are the most watched Percy Jackson channel on YouTube at the moment, which is really cool. And I'm glad that you guys are able to find these through just searching for them. Scorpion King says, can you please do Demigods versus Magicians? This is the Kane Chronicles Percy Jackson tie-in book. There's a single reference. I've previously said that there are no references between the series outside of this book. I'm wrong. There's a single reference, and I couldn't tell you where it is. But in the Percy Jackson greater series, there is a mention that there is other magic on Long Island, and that's supposed to represent Egypt. Percy Jackson is never mentioned in the Kane Chronicles, But anyways, Rick Riordan made a crossover, like, little novella book between the two series. Yes, I will do it, but I will probably wait till after the Kane Chronicles is done. Question from Stupid Little Aliens, who says, can you read The Sun and the Star? Yes. So you can see it behind me right there. I am actively reading it. I probably won't post it until after we're done with Trials of Apollo, which means that it probably won't hit the channel till next year. And the reason for that is The Sun and the Star takes place after Trials of Apollo. And I mentioned earlier, Trials of Apollo has a very, very significant spoiler in it. And that spoiler is referenced several times because of how impactful it is on the characters in The Sun and the Star. And so for spoiler purposes, I don't want to give you guys The Sun and the Star until after at least we reach that point. Now, the good news is that point takes place about halfway through the series. It's not near the end of the series. It's about halfway in the middle of it. And so after we get done with the third Trials of Apollo book, I would be more than happy to release Sun and the Star because I think it makes like narrative sense that you guys would be fine with that. But Stinker says, who is your favorite Percy Jackson villain? Garyon. Hands down, Garyon is one of my favorite characters in the entire series, and it's probably just because I enjoy doing his voice. I was really bummed that he showed up in House of Hades, and he doesn't have a speaking line. Like, he's mentioned several times in House of Hades, and then he actually shows up at the end, and he doesn't have a speaking line, and I was peeved, because I really wanted to do my Garyon voice again. Thomas Hayher says, I can remember those short stories. I got them in a double-sided book with another short story on World Book Day. Interesting. To be honest, I've never read them. I have never read the Kane Chronicles Percy Jackson crossover book, but I'm curious to do so. Question from... This is my last pre-prepared question, so if you guys have questions that you want to keep asking in the chat, feel free to do so. Big R says, what is the Demigod Diaries? I've never seen or heard about Rick writing this. So, I mentioned earlier, so Rick has basically 5 main series, right? He has the 3 separate Percy Jackson series, those being Percy Jackson, Heroes of Olympus, and Trials of Apollo. And then if you really wanted to get technical, you could say that the new Percy Jackson trilogy is a separate series. But then he's also got Kane Chronicles and Magnus Chase. And for all of at least the Greek series, he has what are called companion books. And so in the original Percy Jackson quintilogy, it's called The Demigod Files, and it's a collection of short stories that fit right before the the Last Olympian. And then for Heroes of Olympus, he wrote one called The Demigod Diaries. Now, this is significantly less known than The Demigod Files. It came out right around the time that Mark of Athena came out. It takes place before Mark of Athena. And it's not as, like, there's not as much lore dump which helps out the future of the series, if that makes sense. So, like, you don't necessarily have to read the Demigod Files, but it'll do more for you reading the Demigod Files going forward than it would for you to read the Demigod Diaries going forward, if that makes any sense. And then he did a couple for Trials of Apollo, and he's got a bunch of other side books. One that I just got done reading that'll be up on the channel after Blood of Olympus is called Camp Jupiter Classified, and it's basically like 150 pages, 25 days, or little tiny chapters, and it's a diary of a character that is introduced for this book, taking place at Camp Jupiter during a time where, like, someone is sabotaging Camp Jupiter. And so, like, he does this for basically every series, or at least all of the Greek ones, and Demigod Diaries is the one for Heroes of Olympus. Let's see here. Who is your favorite character in House of the Dragon? Good question. Who is my favorite character in House of the Dragon? Helena. No. I mean, yes. So I love Helena's character. And I love the way that they've changed her for the show. I really liked young Rhaenyra. I'm not as big a fan of Rhaenyra in her older portrayal. Part of it is I'm just a huge Millie Alcock fan. I was a huge fan of Millie Alcock's portrayal. And I'm not a huge fan of Emma D'Arcy's portrayal, even though Emma D'Arcy's portrayal is a lot more book accurate than young Rhaenyra. I think both Aegon II and Aemond are really, really fun to watch on screen. I thought their interaction in episode 4 was really, really fun to watch. There's a lot of really good characters. Season 2 is, like, I love Season 1, and I don't think Season 2 quite has the highs that, like, we haven't quite reached, like, Season 1, Episode 8 level, in my opinion. Like, Season 2, Episode 4 was really good, but we haven't quite peaked there yet. But I would say, as a whole, Season 2, in my opinion, is better average-wise than Season 1. Let's go to a question from Thomas Hayhurst says, I should also mention, since I'm repping my home county of Lancashire, I can recommend the works of Joseph Delaney wholeheartedly. They are to me what Percy Jackson seems to be for you. I will not do my Lancashire accent because my northern accents are terrible, and I do not want to offend you. I am always embarrassed. If you've been keeping up with my my Game of Thrones readings, I do just a pretty standard northern accent for every single northern character, and it's really, really bad. So I'm not going to attempt it, but interesting. I'm very, very happy to hear Lancashire. I will check him out, Joseph Delaney. Gage says, which form of mythology do you like the most? My favorite form of mythology... Oh, man. Probably Greek. Like, I really enjoy Greek mythology. I've never enjoyed Roman mythology that much. Roman mythology, it's interesting because Roman mythology is a lot more structured than Greek mythology. But I've always... And I think this is why, like, me and a lot of other people don't like the Roman stuff as much as the Greek stuff, because Greek stuff feels so much more fun and just kind of, like, whimsical, whereas the Roman stuff is very just... If that makes any sense. At the same time, Norse mythology, and I say this as, like I mentioned, an ethnic Norwegian, Norse mythology has always felt a little too wild for me. And Egyptian, like, I don't know what it is about Egyptian mythology that I've never latched onto. I enjoy Egyptology, but I don't necessarily enjoy Egyptian mythology the same as I do Greek mythology. I think Greek, just, it's the heart of everything. It has been historically for the last 5,000 years, and I think I enjoy that very much because of that. Stinker says, do you know about a book series called Flowers in the Attic? If so, do you think you will read it? I'll add it to my list, certainly. I've been looking to get a little more into the horror genre, if that's the book that I'm thinking of. I just started doing mystery stuff with it's not out on the channel yet. It's out on Patreon, but it should be out in a couple weeks here. Sherlock Holmes. I'm starting to do some of the short stories from Sherlock Holmes. I just finished Scandal in... I always want to say Belgravia. That's the show version. Scandal in Bohemia is what it's called, the original short story. But I'd love to do some more horror stuff. So yes, I'll add it to my list. Poseidon's Cabin, BFF of Percy, says, when do you plan on reading Percy Jackson Greek Gods and Percy Jackson Greek Heroes? Good question. They're behind me. They're in the list. So just whenever I get to them. I've already done 3 of the side books. So please satisfy yourselves with those as long as you can. Because I don't want to burn myself out of Percy Jackson content at the moment. But they are on my list. So we'll get there eventually. I can't give you a date at the moment. Hopefully before Christmas. Big R says, thank you for all you do. Thank you. Are you planning on reading the Brooklyn House Magician's Manual? I've never read it. I'm assuming this is the Kane Chronicles one. I've never read it. If it is a readable book... So the problem with some of these, and I get that way with some of the Harry Potter side books, is they're not really readable books as an audiobook. And so if it is readable, the way that the Demigod Files or Demigod Diaries is, then yes, I'll check it out. I have to buy it. I've never read it before. Morgaine G says, how many books are you reading currently? Right shoulder, left shoulder, pile in front of me. Many. Actively reading 3. So that's like 3 books will get at least a recorded chapter a day. Everything else is just kind of on a cycle of when I can get to it. It's about a 1.5-month cycle. Mirage says, why did you put out Demigod Diaries in one go and not in chapters like all the other books? At least I don't remember them coming out in chapters. Good question. So there are... sorry for the pause. I have to think about how to word this. There are certain books that I want you guys to engage with daily. And there are some that I like. This channel is very much focused around Percy Jackson. Has been that way since the show came out. Like, that is why this channel blew up. And so I want to give you guys Percy Jackson content daily. And so I do that with the daily chapters. Everything else, though, I feel like I can give to you guys as just kind of this big prize, like this big present. And so I could sprinkle in like 30 minutes of a chapter here, 30 minutes of a chapter there. But I think it's more rewarding for you guys if it all, like, all of a sudden you show up on a Friday afternoon and it's like, boom, Echoworm posted a 4-hour Percy Jackson side book. Like, to me, that is more exciting to me, if that makes any sense. Plus, that allows me not to have to keep it as, interrupt my current schedule of daily chapters. Like, I have 2 chapters a day, like, of the daily chapter stuff. And then I sprinkle stuff in the afternoons. And so for me, I think it's more rewarding for you guys. It's less taxing on me to put an expectation of a daily chapter. And so those are the reasons that I can give. Oliver Finstead says, I would have lost it if you said Kristen Cole. I hate that guy. I will tell you this. He is more sympathetic in the show than he is in the book. He is the villain of the book. But yeah, the portrayal, not Fabian. What is, I can't remember the actor's name for the life of me. But yeah, he's doing a great job. Fantastic job. I enjoyed him very much in the first season. And then of course now he's just an obnoxious character. Thomas Ayer says, "Go on, try me. I've heard it all before." It's really bad. So my family, my British family comes from Manchester. I'm actually going to Manchester, and then we're staying in Chesterfield. My wife and I are going to England next month for her birthday, and we'll obviously pass through on the way to Derbyshire. But yeah, it'll be interesting because my goal when I'm over there is, when I'm not trying to talk to my wife, I'm going to try to put on an accent as much as I can. And I'm going to try to regionalize it. So when we're in London, I'll try to do the London talk. When we're up in Manchester, I'll try to Mancunianize my accent. Derbyshire is going to be a hard one for me. My Yorkshire Pennines, it's so bad. It's not even funny. James Hamlin says, unfortunately, I can't stay. Thank you for the channel and your audiobooks. It really helps the 9 to 5 fly by. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Big R says, Egyptian mythology is so sick, not as cool as Greek. You're right. Personal taste for me. If you like Egyptian stuff, that is totally up to you. I'm really into Egyptian history. I love Egyptology. I love the studies of the pharaohs and Egyptian culture, but their mythology has just never stuck with me. And I think it's because all of their gods look the same for the most part, or if they don't look the same, they have the ability to look the same. And that's always thrown me off. And I like Greek is a lot more like, here's this god, here's what they do, here is their children over here kind of thing. And it's less, like I said, it's less, they kind of made it up as they go. It's not as static as Roman. Thomas Haher says, it's very regimented and the Romans had a god for everything, so it gets a bit overwhelming. Yeah, I agree. Big R says, read the Kane Chronicles if you haven't yet. I've read them, I just haven't recorded them, so I currently just started reading The Red Pyramid. It's the first time I've read it since it came out. Perkabest says, what books should I read? Because I got rid of a bunch. Depends what you're looking for. Give me a genre and give me an age range, and I'll give you a more specific answer. Poseidon's Cabin BFF of Percy says, what about Camp Half-Blood Confidential? That's the one I was thinking of. Yes. So I have read Camp Jupiter Classified. I just finished recording it this morning, actually. And I have it scheduled to post. It's not going to come out until after Blood of Olympus for spoiler reasons. But the other one that I haven't read is Camp Half-Blood Confidential, excuse me. Thomas Hayhurst says, have you ever seen 21 Pilots live? I have. My wife and I in October are going to go see them in Minneapolis. I have seen them 3 times. I saw them 3 times on the same tour, actually. They were trying to sell out the XL Energy Center in St. Paul when I was in college. And so they were giving away tickets at the door for like $5. And I decided to go already having tickets for them in Denver. So I went and saw them in St. Paul, used my tickets in Denver. And then about a year later, they redid their tour and came back to Minneapolis on the same tour, just playing the Target Center instead of the XL Energy Center. And I saw them again there. So I have seen them 3 times before. I'm excited to see them again with a whole new set list. Stinker says, do you play music? Yes. A link to my music is available in the description below. Kaimos17 says, have you read The Secrets of the Immortal Nicholas Flamel series? No, I am aware of it. I'll add it to my list. I am aware of it and am familiar with it, but I've never read it before. Poseidon's Cabin BFF of Percy says, what about the short stories and guide from Magnus? Yes, so I mentioned this earlier. I'll say it again. My intention is to read every single one of Rick Riordan's side stories, as well as his current series. I will not commit to all of the Rick Riordan Presents books because A, he didn't write them, and B, there's 15 billion of them. And so just because he slaps his name on something that he didn't write doesn't mean that it's part of this universe. And this universe is what I'm going to stick to because there's just way too much out there otherwise. Let's see here. Big R says, can we talk about Princess Rhaenys? We absolutely could. I thought it was a... excuse me. I thought it was a fantastic episode. And I forgot... when it happened, I thought they killed off the king. And I forgot about the accident. I forgot about the end of the battle from the book. Obviously, I knew who died in that battle specifically, but I forgot that the king was so seriously hurt in that battle that he basically disappears for the next year. But the way that it was filmed, when I watched the episode the first time, I thought they'd killed him off. And so I was like, oh, this wasn't in the book. And I know that they've been changing things from the book, and so that wouldn't necessarily have surprised me. But I definitely forgot about that aspect of things. I forgot about the repercussions of that battle in the book. She's so cool. Plus, after episode 4, I'm really wondering what happens next with the Valyrians. Do you mean Valyrians or Valarians? Because the Valarian family, there's some cool stuff that's about to happen. But the Valyrians, as an ethnic group, yeah, I mean, they just continue, obviously. We get them in Game of Thrones. Morgaine G says, I have to go, but I wanted to say thank you so much for this corner of the internet you're creating. Well, thank you very much. I'm so happy to have other people be a part of it and be invested in this little community that we built here. So I don't plan on going anywhere. If we stop making money tomorrow, I don't plan on going anywhere either. So Nick says, have you ever read the Kane Chronicles not on the channel, just on your own? Yes, I own all of the first editions. This is the original first edition of the Red Pyramid that came out in, 2011? 2012? This book is dated 2010. I was a couple years off. But yes, I have read all of them. Perkabeth says, like 11 to 16 and Greek or fiction or nonfiction. There's a book on the channel that I want to have you check out just because it's not very popular and I really like the book. It is called The Gardener. It's available in the YA singles playlist. So go check out The Gardener if you haven't already. It's kind of sci-fi, eco-tech, almost Stranger Things-ish. But it's a book that I read when I was 11 years old and enjoyed. It was the first non-series book that I ever read on the channel. Another book that I would recommend for that age range is, sorry, looking behind me at my bookshelf. I am going to recommend to you Divergent. They're pretty good. Movies kind of suck, but book's pretty good. Poseidon's Cabin BFF of Percy. So do you plan on recording Camp Half-Blood Confidential? Yes, if I didn't make that clear, yes. I will record all of Rick Riordan's books. Stinker says, gotta go. Thanks for the audiobooks. Thank you for being here, Stinker. Appreciate it. Thomas Hayhurst says, are these Rick Riordan Presents like how Tom Clancy is still a name on new books despite him being dead? Kind of. It would more so be like... Oh, what's a good example? So basically, do you, I might be dating myself here, but do you guys remember Oprah's book club? So when Oprah was huge, when Oprah started like her own network in like the late 2000s, early 2010s, she had what was basically called Oprah's book club. There's probably a better name for it than that, but what this was is a book series or any number of books from a variety of authors about a variety of different topics that their publishers wanted to sell better, and so they'd pay Oprah to put her stamp of approval on these books. She had no part in writing it, no part in any of this, but because Oprah put her name on it, they were going to sell better. What these books are is these are mythology books, similar to Percy Jackson, similar to the Kane Chronicles, that were written by any number of side authors that have applied for Rick Riordan to put his name on to sell better. So, for example, one of them is an author of Indian descent. I can't remember if he's American or English, but he wrote one about Hindu mythology and wanted it to sell better. So he pitched it to Rick Riordan, and Rick Riordan says, all right, I'm going to put my name on the front of it. And so it's basically Rick Riordan presents, and then this book that he had no part of writing, but it's mythology. And so people think that because it's a mythology book, and because Rick Riordan's name is on the top of it, that it will either fit into this universe or it'll be similar to the Percy Jackson books, whatever. Regardless, it's selling better. It's the same publishing company. But there's one for Hindu mythology. There's 2 separate series on Korean mythology. There's one on Chinese mythology. I think there's one on Native American mythology, Mayan mythology. There's I bet you there's 7 or 8 different series that are a part of the Rick Riordan Presents overarching universe. And some of them conflict with each other. Like I said, there's 2 separate Korean ones that he put his name on. But because he didn't write them, and because there's so many of them, I don't want to commit to doing all of the Rick Riordan Presents books. Let's see here. Mirage says, yeah, I was also thinking of Tom Clancy. It's probably similar. Big R says, Valarians. I don't know how to spell all these crazy... I know. Well, the confusing part is it's basically the same word, right? There's a family called the Valarians, and they are ethnically Valyrians. And the more confusing part is that in the show they're called the Valarians, but the author pronounces it Valerians. So you have the Valerians and the Valyrians, and the Valerians are Valyrians, and George R.R. Martin is very confusing. So I don't blame you. But yes, my theory, and this is just a theory, because in the books, Laenor Velaryon is dead. This is Rhaenyra's ex-husband, who they faked his death, and now he disappeared. In the book, he does die. Absolutely, like, they kill him in the book. In the show, they don't. He's still alive in the book, or in the show. The reason I bring that up is because his dragon, the silver dragon that keeps flying over, this new character, for the life of me, I can't remember his name. The other, you know who I'm talking about. It's not Carl Corey, that's his boyfriend. Anyways, this dragon still has a living rider. As far as we know, dragons do not bond with a new rider if their old rider is still alive. That is, it has never been done before in the books or in the shows. So if all of a sudden this character starts riding Sea Smoke while Laenor Velaryon is still alive, that changes the lore significantly. And so what does that mean? Does that mean that he is Laenor's bastard son? Does that mean, the variety of things could be changed here. So it's different than in the books, and I'm very curious to see where it goes from here. You guys are still talking about Tom Clancy. Nick says Divergent is on my read list. I haven't ever finished the series. I've read the first book, and I'm currently rereading it. I got about halfway through the second book, and I stopped reading because I just got kind of bored with it, and I really didn't like the films. So I'm curious to see if I like it better on my second read. I like the first book. I've noticed this. So I don't really remember this, and this is because I wasn't writing as actively then as I am now. I forgot that Hunger Games, not Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, but the normal Hunger Games series, and the Divergent series are written in, I couldn't even tell you what, it's like a present tense. And so like when we read Percy Jackson, it's, I went, I did, he saw, it's past. And I write the same way, and most authors write this way. But when it comes to Divergent and the Hunger Games, they use like a present tense. And so it's like, I go, I see, I watch. And it's like, it was a very common writing style at the beginning of the 2010s, and I completely forgot about it. And so now rereading it, it's just like, this is a very unique narrative style. And she didn't do it for Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which is why I forgot the Hunger Games were written that way. But Mirage says, have you heard of the 1632 series by Eric Flint? That one also has a lot of author-endorsed fan works and expanded universe. I've never heard of it. I'll try to check it out and see if it's something I can put on my list. Thomas Aher says, you will probably finish all those books in your office before George finishes Winds of Winter. I'm not hopeful, I'll be honest with you. I'm really not hopeful for the future of that series. Yeah, it's scaring me. Perkabest says, what is the order of Heroes of Olympus? The Heroes of Olympus series is very easy to follow, order-wise. It gets more confusing when you throw the different books in there, but it starts with The Lost Hero, and then it goes to Son of Neptune, Mark of Athena, House of Hades, Blood of Olympus. 5 books, release order, pretty easy. It gets more confusing when you add in the new Percy Jackson books, The Trials of Apollo, Sun and the Star, and all of the side books, right? So the chronological order, and the order that I would recommend you read them in for the entire series, is the first 4 Percy Jackson books, then add Demigod Files, then the 5th Percy Jackson book, then the first 2 Heroes of Olympus books, and once you're done with Son of Neptune, then read Demigod Diaries, then read the last 3 Heroes of Olympus books, and then I would read Camp Jupiter Classified and Camp Half-Blood Confidential, and then I would read the new Percy Jackson books. So that's Chalice of the Gods, and that's the 2 that have yet to come out. Wrath of the Triple Goddess, and then the 3rd one they haven't named yet. Once you're done with those, then go to Trials of Apollo, read all 5 Trials of Apollo books, and I for the life of me can't tell you where those extra books come in, and then Sun and the Star. That is the chronological order of all of them, and that's what I personally would read them in. Let's see here. Donnie Nichols says, really happy I discovered your channel, man. I've been reading Lost Hero, and it's easier to get things done while reading with your videos. Well, thank you very much. I love hearing things like that. So thank you very much for joining and being a part of this. Mirage says, I found it interesting, but I think it's a bit of an acquired taste. I would hesitate to recommend it to everyone. Like I said, I'll check it out and see, like, Game of Thrones isn't for everyone. I know that. I'm very well aware of that. And so I probably won't put the main books on, because of their content, I probably won't put them on my YouTube channel, but I'll put them over on Patreon and on Vimeo. There also might be some copyright issues since the show is out. Perkabest says, I went wrong order. That's like, you could read them in any order. For me personally, it makes sense because Rick wrote them out of order, but he also peppered in spoilers for other books. And so, like, that's the order I would go in. Big R says he's probably never going to finish. Yeah, we're still talking about George R. R. Martin. That's my interpretation, is that he probably won't finish because he wants to write another Dunk and Egg story. And he wants to write a second Fire and Blood before he writes Winds of Winter. The man's like 70. And he's not the healthiest of guys if you look at him. And he's also got a show under his belt right now. And he's got at least another show in the pipeline with the new Dunk and Egg series. So it's like, I don't think he's ever going to finish Winds of Winter. Let's see here. Infected Phantom says, I have a friend, and I was trying to explain the 6th Percy Jackson book doesn't go immediately after the 5th, and he was so confused. You have no idea how many people comment on my channel asking when I'm going to read the 6th Percy Jackson book, and I have to explain that I will get there when we get there in series order. And then they're like, well, what do you mean? You've read the 5th one? And I'm like, yes, but there are at least 5 books that take place before it. Like, the 6th Percy Jackson book doesn't fit after the 5th one. You have to wait until after. So part of it is Rick Riordan did that. He wasn't originally intending to go back to the Percy Jackson series the way he did, and he did now. And he's made it clear where things fit, which is really nice. Sometimes authors aren't quite like that with their prequels and all that, but yeah, it's my interpretation. My understanding is that the new Percy Jackson series will have 3 books: Chalice of the Gods, Wrath of the Triple Goddess, and then Percy Jackson 8, which has not yet been named, will come out next September. Those books take place between Heroes of Olympus and Trials of Apollo. And Sun and the Star, behind me, behind this shoulder, takes place after Trials of Apollo. And so that's the order that I understand them to be in. Let's see here. Oliver Finstead says, have you read A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms? If so, was it good? Yeah, it's fun. It's not like, it's one of those books that you would never have to read. You know, it's fun for the rest of the series. And there's Easter eggs that will reward you. But it's a side novella. It's kind of like the Demigod Files, right? It's just a character that we learn more about, who is not really that consequential for the rest of the series. I would say Fire and Blood is significantly more, as a lore person, like as someone who enjoys learning about the past of a series, I would much rather read Fire and Blood than A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. Not to say they're bad. I love short stories. But like, it's not high on my radar to read comparatively for the rest of the series. But I think it's still enjoyable, and they're making a TV show out of it, so it's got enough substance to it that it's fun. Like, some people really enjoy them. Thomas Hayhurst says, have you ever read the Skullduggery Pleasant series? They're for younger people, but I still enjoy them as an adult as the first phase gets darker towards the end. I've never read them. I'm well aware of them, and they are fairly high on my list. Yes, I've never read them. I'm aware. Did they make a show about them recently? Regardless, yes, they are on my list. Let's see here. Mirage says, the first English book I picked up back in 5th grade was The Stone of Farewell, which turned out to be the second volume in a trilogy. And that one was a complicated one with lots of appendices. So one issue that I have with Dune is that Dune is... This is kind of a side tangent, but you talked about appendices. Dune doesn't explain its world to you, which to me is both a cool thing and a bad thing. It expects you to either pick it up as you read it or look at the appendices as you read. And for some of that, it's fine. But sometimes they use really, really big words that the author invented, and you have no idea what he's talking about. Like, he'll say, this goes against the convention of the Landsrad. And he'll never explain to you what a Landsrad is. That's not an English word. That's not a word, period. You know, if you speak Dutch, or if you speak some of the Northern European languages, you could probably pick up what Landsrad means. But like, when you're reading Dune the first time, there's a lot of big words that he just made up, and you're expected to figure out what they mean. And so it's very, like, reading with appendices is very, very confusing. Oliver Finstead says, I look forward to the show since I would like another type of series other than royal drama like Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. Well, I gotta... I mean, if you weren't aware of this, and I'm not trying to be pedantic with you, it is about the royal family. Like, the Dunk and Egg stories, the main character is the prince of the kingdom. Now, at the time of the book, he is not the heir to the throne. And so that's part of why he's allowed to have these adventures. But he does end up becoming king later on, if you know the series. And so it's still a story about rich people, but it is a different outlook on the world. Joseph Diadio says, is The Hobbit on your list? Yes, I will read The Hobbit before Lord of the Rings, because I enjoy The Hobbit more than Lord of the Rings, and I know that's a really hot take. But yes, I do intend to read The Hobbit eventually. It won't be on the channel, it'll be free over on Patreon and on Vimeo. Mirage says it's a German word. Thank you. Yes, Landsrad is a German word. Thank you. 4RT3M4S says, what order should I read Rick Riordan's books? Honestly, it depends. Like, there's 5 series, right? But it's basically one very, very large series made up of 3 different books, or 3 different book series. and then 2 separate series that are really unrelated. You could read Kane Chronicles on their own anytime. You could read Magnus Chase on its own anytime. I personally would read the Camp Half-Blood Chronicles books in the order that I said. So the first 5 Percy Jackson books, the 5 Heroes of Olympus books, the other 3 Percy Jackson books, and then the 5 Trials of Apollo books, and then Sun and the Star. Let's see here. Oliver Finstead. Oh, sorry. So I might be confused following what you just said. So A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, if we're still talking about the Hedge Knight series, is a collection of short stories. So it's very similar to something like the Demigod Files or the Demigod Diaries in Percy Jackson. But it is a collection of short stories about 2 characters prior to the beginning of Game of Thrones, but after Fire and Blood. And it's the story of one of the princes of the 7 kingdoms who is not heir to the throne, who basically goes off on adventures with a low-born knight. And so they travel around the 7 kingdoms, basically teaching you, the reader, about why this king eventually, because he does become king through a variety of very, very bizarre circumstances, how he gained his outlook on the world. And so compared to Fire and Blood and Game of Thrones, it deals with the small folk a lot more. So yes, it doesn't quite deal with royal drama, but the main character, Egg, so it's Dunk and Egg. Dunk is the knight, Egg is the prince. Egg becomes Egon the Fourth. Egon the Fourth. And so he still is, it still is royal drama, but it takes place a lot more with the small folk than the rest of the series does. And I want to say there's 4 of them, 4 short novellas, and he's working on another one, but I could be wrong about that number. But Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is the collection of those. Thomas Hayhurst says, let's see, where were we at here? Skullduggery Pleasant. They haven't, and I'm not sure I'd want one. It feels kind of like H.P. Lovecraft or Cormac McCarthy's books. Okay, maybe I'm wrong then. Yeah, Cormac McCarthy's Cormac McCarthy's really dark. I saw someone make the reason I laughed is I saw someone make a minimalist minimalist cover art is really in right now. And sometimes the joke is that minimalist cover art often negates the feel of a book. And so I saw someone make minimalist cover art for American Psycho and several of the Cormac McCarthy books. So Cormac McCarthy is the author of The Road and No Country for Old Men. Very, very dark books. And then they have these cute little, it almost looks like Legally Blonde. Just stupid book covers for very, very serious, very, very dark books. But yeah, oh my gosh. If you've ever seen No Country for Old Men, or you've ever seen The Road, the books are significantly darker and significantly worse. And I don't mean worse as in bad quality, but you finish reading them and you want to go take a shower or find God, or your world darkens reading these books. They're very, very dark books. Let's see here. Kimaz17 says, you may want to check the Looking Glass Wars trilogy. It's not as popular as other young adult fantasy series, but I really enjoyed reading it growing up. I will check it out and add it to my list. I should probably wrap it up. I know my wife is waiting for me to go eat. So let's give it 5 more minutes. If you guys have some questions that you guys want to ask, wrap them up now. And if I don't get to your questions in the chat in the next 5 minutes or so, feel free to add them not in the chat, but in the comments, because the comments will stay after the live chat is done, and I will add them to next week's docket for questions. So feel free to ask for the next 5 minutes, and then we'll call it a stream. I just want to check out Patreon and see if we have any more questions over there. So the one nice thing that I really like about House of Hades is it's the first and I believe only book in Rick Riordan's collection that has more than 70 chapters. which provided me the opportunity to read a 69th chapter titled Annabeth. And people are really getting a kick out of that. So thank you, Rick, for going past the number 70. No comments over on Patreon. Let me check Discord real quick. Goose is joined it over on Patreon. Thank you very much, Goose. And last but not least, check the YouTube comments. Okay. Big R says, it's been an awesome stream. I'm glad I was able to drop by. Thanks again. Absolutely. Thank you for being here. We'll hopefully see you in a couple weeks. Thomas Hayhurst says, the one Cormac McCarthy book I've read was Blood Meridian, and that scrambled my brain with how hard it was to read. Also, Judge Holden makes me want to shower for a whole day with how gross he is. Yeah. Cormac McCarthy, for the most part, is the less sexualized version of Stephen King. And what I mean by that is one of the reasons that I don't really want to read a ton of Stephen King's books on the channel is he's a very dark writer, a very horror-heavy writer, but a lot of the time Stephen King uses sexuality or just like perverted versions of sexuality to accentuate his horror. Cormac McCarthy, there are moments of it, but for the most part, a lot of his horror or his darkness is less sexual, which, like, as a narrator, I am more comfortable reading. As personally, as a reader, like me personally, I would rather read that. But at the same time, it is as dark in a very different way. And so with The Road, you have cannibalism, you have just tribalism taken to its extreme. It's like the adult version of Lord of the Flies. And then, yeah, you get Anton Chigurh in No Country for Old Men, and just like someone who really, really does not care for the repercussions of his actions. And it's a fascinating outlook, and it's a very dark outlook, and it's a very sad outlook on the world for just people getting caught up in things that they had no business being in and should never have been in the first place, and they were just at the wrong place at the wrong time. All right, maybe one more question if it reaches me, and then I'm going to call it a day. So coming up on the channel, tonight, 1 o'clock Eastern, midnight Central, you are going to see the full first half of House of Hades appear on the channel, which means that 3 weeks from tonight, you should see, let's see, that would be, I believe it's August 2nd, if I did the math correctly. August 2nd is when the full second half of House of Hades should drop. Then we'll start Blood of Olympus. We'll start Dune the next day. You can find all of those in advance over on Patreon. We finish House of Hades on Patreon next Tuesday, I believe, and then we'll start Blood of Olympus the next day. Also over on Patreon, we are just finishing up the Silver Chair, which is the 6th Chronicles of Narnia book. That should be up on the main channel sometime in August. And then after that, we are going to be starting... we're going to do two... I know I have before said I didn't want to do this. I don't want to do it on the main channel. But right now, for pacing purposes, I'm going to do it over on Patreon. But we're going to do Blood of Olympus coinciding with the Red Pyramid. So that should start not tonight, but I believe tomorrow night. We'll start the Red Pyramid, and then we'll get through Kane Chronicles, the first book, over on Patreon. And then once we're done with the Percy Jackson series, then we'll continue the Kane Chronicles with the second book there, do Hunger Games over there, and all of these side books will appear on the channel periodically. Trying to think of other things. Another live stream in 2 weeks, like I mentioned, so that is July 25th, barring anything major that might cause me not to be able to do that. I'll let you guys know in advance, but shoot for the 25th for being our next live stream. We'll try to start that as usual at 5 Eastern. Infected Phantom says, do you keep these posted after they're live? Typically, yes. Yeah, so you should be able to find all of my past live streams by just clicking on the live folder. And I'm assuming this one will stay up as well. Other stuff to mention, we do have merchandise if you guys want to check that out. So If you click the bonfire link in the description below, you can find the I Ate the Kitchen Table shirt. It is my most famous blunder. It happened early on in Sea of Monsters. Instead of saying that Percy ate at the kitchen table, I mentioned that he ate the kitchen table. It's in the Percy Jackson book font, as well as a little trident underneath. You can find that in a variety of colors, in a premium unisex tee as low as $20, and all the way up to pullover hoodies and crewneck sweatshirts for, I believe, $25, or maybe $35 if you want to check those out there. Links to other stuff is down in the description below. My music, Discord, Vimeo, where you can find Harry Potter and Hunger Games, Patreon if you want to become a paying member and get stuff in advance for just $3 a month. I mentioned earlier the $25 a month or more book club, and then in between those tiers that get you little shoutouts at the end of all of my videos. I do have a second channel if you guys want to check it out. SHEET space G, that is Sheet G. I do all of my long form video essays and just some personal stuff over there if you want to check that out as well. Same logo, just a different color and different letters, and you guys can do that over there. That's all I got for you, though. If you have more questions that you want answered, do it in the comments, not the live chat, and I will try to get to them in 2 weeks' time. Until then, though, thank you guys very much. I really appreciate everything that you do for me, and hopefully you guys enjoy the stuff that I do for you.